Locally became known as Charlie Red Star. The sightings occurred in Carmen, Manitoba, about 25 miles north of the Canada-U.S. border. Hundreds of other people sighted objects at the same time. During a prolonged flock of sightings over the next 18 months, he had many sightings of large objects and small objects in the area. He spent countless days in the area photographing and a series of strange objects and interviewing hundreds of witnesses who were involved. So without any further ado, I want to bring Cameron on the show, Grant on the show, because he's got some great stuff. So welcome.
Well, thanks for having me on, James. I appreciate your interest in what I'm doing.
Yeah, I've heard some of your other interviews, and it was right on par with a lot of work we're doing here as well. And I like how you're bringing the consciousness and energy into ufology, which is very necessary if you're going to get the full picture. But what have you been working on lately?
Well, I'm still doing the consciousness thing. As people know, I started with the UFO thing and basically spent 37 years sort of going nowhere. And then I had the consciousness experience watching Colin Andrews' lecture in 2012. And that sort of flipped everything for me. It came as a noetic encounter experience. And I made a complete shift. I sort of gave up on chasing the government. The government may know what's going on, but they're not going to tell you. And there's a lot of people in the government who may know what's going on. They're not going to tell you. And I got into the idea that I'd basically been told in this sort of noetic experience that consciousness was involved. And then in about 2017, I had a second experience, which was much more detailed noetic experience. I was walking down a street, and I got 24 things that were given to me, one after another. And that sort of just shifted me away from, to look at the nature of reality. What are we really talking about here? So that's what I've sort of been doing now. I'm doing a lot with experiences, because I believe that unless you talk to the people who are interacting with the phenomena, you're basically wasting your time. You might as well, go back to 1947. We're sitting there trying to prove to skeptics that UFOs exist, and it's like, and maybe because I had the experience where 1975 I was within 500 yards 5 times, so I was pretty close. So I never went down that road of trying to prove to people that I saw something. I could care less whether you believe it or not. I know since the day one that this is a real phenomenon. And as you pointed out, I researched in 75, and I went and I interviewed all these people. I thought I'd sort of got the biggest story of all times, and I wrote it up in a manuscript, and nobody could care less. I couldn't believe it. I was like, the one woman said to me, the big publisher said, "Mr. Cameron, you may believe in this kind of stuff. Count me among the unbelievers." And I went, wow. It's just like, so all I've really been interested in since 1975, since I had my personal experiences, was what was it that I saw in the sky? And somebody's got to know what's going on here. And I went through, I went to the Canadian government first. I went to former president of Penn State University, chased him around for 8 years, trying to get him to talk. And then to the president of the United States, and I chased around the head scientists, guys for the CIA, all these guys. And in the end, I came to the conclusion that the people who are interacting with the phenomena are the people that know what's going on. So I spent a lot of time dealing with those people, interviewing people, and I've gotten in lately. I'm doing I've got about 6 books that are about to come out, and one of them is on contact modalities, based upon what I've learned from different experiencers. I've come to the conclusion that there are different modalities, different ways that you can get into the field. All the information is in the field. And going back to the 2012 idea was that consciousness is primary. Unless people understand that consciousness comes first and matter comes second, it's not going to work, because people have this idea that there's a physical world and there's physical planets out there, and there's time and space and all this kind of stuff. And what I was basically told a couple of times was, you have to understand that it's sort of like this, sort of like a big hologram. It's all here, it's all now. It's consciousness. Everything's made out of consciousness. And I started to do a book called Contact Modalities, which should be coming out shortly. And that looks at people who've had near-death experiences, people who've channeled, people who read tarot cards. And I've got about 70 different modalities. And I basically sort of came to the conclusion that all these people are in some way getting into the field. Because that's what happened to me. I was walking along the street, my second one, walking along the street, paying no attention to anything. And suddenly I'm in there, and I know it's coming with absolute certainty. This information is coming into my head. And I started to look around, and I realized there was a bunch of other people who were getting in the field as well. Now, a lot of them are getting it through, say, an ET experience or whatever you want to call it. I always call it the intelligence kind of phenomenon. Because the more I look at it, the more I start to think it's a little more complex than just ETs. And these people are getting stuff. And, you know, some of the surveys show that 40% of experiencers claim at one point during their experience, they knew the answer to everything in the universe. And the vast majority of the UFO community wants nothing to do with them. It's anecdotal, you know, they just believe they're having these experiences. And it's like, you know, if there's 40% of people who claim that they know knew everything at one point, why would you not at least talk to them? Give them lie detectors, whatever you got to do, but talk to the people. Why would you ignore these people? So I spent a lot of time.
So quiet. The hell is that noise? Sounds like a raccoon fighting with a possum. The first time I've ever heard that from my spot. Oh, you guys can't hear it. Hang on. Oh, Chicago's so quiet. I don't know what that weird ass noise is. It's freaking me out. Let me know if you guys see any UFOs. There's nothing flying. What the hell was that? What the fuck? Man. Now I'm super wigging out. What's up, Game Vet? What's happening, man? Good to see you. Started tripping out. The shower just turned on by itself. Freaked me out. There's a weird ass noise outside. Hoping it's just a flag. It was the weirdest ever. My shower just turned on by itself. You too. I got into a game and could not get away. Have a good night. I will watch this in the morning. All right, cool, brother. Be safe. I'm just looking out for UFOs for a little bit. Testing out the camera. See how things go. Thank you. A lot of trucks going by. I'm really happy about that. A lot of trucks are cruising.
And the thing that sort of excited me the most is I've run across a lot of experiencers now who actually claim that they've been in the spirit world, that the beings have actually taken them inside the spirit world and have shown these bizarre connections between the spirit world, identical things. And I'll give you an example. I have a guy I just interviewed. I've interviewed him about 5 or 6 hours, and he had 3 experiences where he was taken into the spirit world. And he talks about his mother in the spirit world taking him to this building, and in the building, it's a little tiny building, and like a sort of like a temple thing. And he goes into the building, and he said it's 10 times the size inside the building as it is outside. And he said it was the strangest thing he'd ever seen. And yet you go to Chris Bledsoe, who's a prime ET contact, who told me about flying the craft. I've got 50 people who've flown the craft, and they all say the same thing. So I said to Chris Bledsoe, I said, Chris, how do you fly the craft? He says, well, I go in the craft, he said, I realize it's like 10 times the size inside than it is outside. And I'm going, that sounds familiar. It's the same story. One's in the spirit world, one's in the UFOs. Then you start wondering, is it actually a UFO, or is it the spirit world, or are these two things basically all consciousness, and it's how you're interpreting? And the other one was, I'm a big fan of Dr. Michael Newton. He did the whole work on life between lives. He did the 7,000 regressions, and there's now 35,000 regressions where he takes people into the spirit world. And in there, they talk about being in the spirit world where they're looking at these books where you look at your past lives and you find your next lives and stuff like this. And in the book, they open it up and it's a crystal, giant crystal. And Ron Johnson talks about the same thing. His mother in this room takes him to the end of this building, and there's these.
If you guys watching 1080p, it's much better. I think it's putting out. It might be putting out 1080p. best I can do.
Crystals on the table, and he can see his mother's light. His light won't appear until he dies, but his crystal is in there. He can see his dog's crystal. He can see the whole light. And I'm going, this is the same story. 1988, if you remember back 1988, UFO cover-up live documentary, supposedly a leak from Ronald Reagan into the UFO community. And the Vulcan is saying the most impressive thing he saw in all his time working with UFOs was the aliens had this crystal, and they could show the history of the world by looking at the crystal at a certain angle. I'm going, it's the same story. So I'm looking at these connections with these people who are what I call contact modalities. And what you see is these similarities between all these modalities that indicate to me what reality may actually be. And that UFOs is just sort of a very advanced form of reality that you're starting to pick up the idea that there's no time, there's no space, it's all consciousness, that there are interacting beings and stuff. Whereas the materialistic world believes, a random biological robot in a meaningless universe and all this kind of stuff. And I've moved so far out there that I really don't care what anybody thinks. I'm just working on what I'm discovering from talking to experiencers, and I think that's where the answer is.
Yeah, I did too. Well, my years of experience, because I had 2 near-death experiences.
Yeah.
And that blew me wide open. And then when the ship started appearing to me, I had to incorporate it into my spiritual practice.
So dead out.
I was studying with yogis and lamas.
Sorry
and
that light's in the way.
And then, I was waiting for masters to appear to me, and I was having, appearances of masters, even getting photographs of them when they would appear. And then the next thing you know, the ship started appearing, and then finally I had to start incorporating that into my reality.
Sure, that's true, because like the free survey, the Edgar Mitchell survey showed 37% of people have near-death experiences claim they've had near-death experience. And I remember they wanted to get a committee going. And I said, well, why do you need a committee? Because one of the things that I got in my noetic experience, the noetic experience is the world made out of physical nuts and bolts? If it is, that's one world. But if it's made out of consciousness, that's a different world. If it's one life, that's one world with rules. But if it's multiple lives, all the rules change. And then it was the thing about random. So is it a random world? If it's a random world, then you've got all these different rules. But if it's not random, if it's patterned, then it's a completely different world. And that was the whole thing where how could 37% of all experiencers have a near-death experience? Like people who claim to be UFO people have this, and they're one, they couldn't figure this out. Like, how could this possibly be? And I say, because you're making the false assumption, you're assuming it's a random world, that both events are random. Maybe both events are planned, that you actually came in on a soul contract or whatever you want to call it, and that these aren't random events. And that's so a lot of times like right now I'm into light language. I've run up against, and you get these synchronicities where all these people come up with these light language things. And the one guy, so I say to him, he's supposed to be one of the foremost authorities in the world. He's in Singapore. And I said to him, so how did you get in this light language thing? And he said, I was 6 years old. I got hit by a car. I go, it's the same story every time, And it's like, and that's where I had the contact modality. So it may be a psychedelics, maybe a head injury, it may be a high fever, it may be getting hit by a car. There's always this sort of event that pops people, almost like it rips the veil. And is it a random event? I don't think it's a random event. That you plan this in order to wake yourself up and to get into the field. And that's the people you got to watch. It's the people who've had the near-death experiences. And why would you not talk to them if they claim they've been in the field and they can tell you what's going on? Because as you know, once you get in the field, you talk to people who have near-death experiences, they're all basically saying the same thing. And that's where you got to go. If you want to understand reality, you got to talk to these people rather than most people go into science. But my impression of science these days is that it's like almost like a religion. It's scientific religious superstitions. It's like, the world's made out of physical, and, at the time of Einstein, we said we got it all duplicated and all the evidence is there. But you got to remember at the time when Einstein developed the theory of relativity and Heisenberg with the uncertainty principle and Bohr with the quantum atom, the belief in science was there was only one galaxy. And people will always say, these channelers and these people who've got these talking to aliens, they're so far off. It's just garbage, whatever. I said, how much more can you get off? Because now we believe there's 2 trillion galaxies. From 1 to 2 trillion, tell me any channeler or a person who's having UFO experience who's that far off from 1 to 2 trillion. And I start to realize that people just buy into the world view, and that if you want to know the real world view, you've got to talk to people who are having these enlightenment who are in the field. So I'm going through all these different things. I'm showing the patterns of all these people through different modalities, gotten in the field, and basically, as I see, are bringing the same sort of material back. And then you get what you're talking about with like ancient teachings. That the teachings of the East 4,000 or 5,000 years ago are going to be right, or the shamans of North America, these people from many years ago, they're going to turn out to be absolutely right, and that's because they had a modality.
I put the wrong microphone on. There might not be any microphone even on. I'm sorry if there's no microphone on.